I'm gonna show you how to make a gluten-free vegan blueberry bundt cake. This recipe is really simple, and as you start making more of the dessert and breakfast like pastry recipes that I put out there, you're gonna realize that all the ingredients are basically the same. So once you get the hang of these ingredients, you pretty much can make any pastry, muffin, waffle, pancake, or dessert that you want. The good thing about this blueberry bundt cake is that it is a great addition to a brunch, office meeting, holiday meal, family barbecue. Everybody is going to love this, and they're not going to believe that it's gluten-free and vegan. All right, so let's get started. So you want to start with 1 can of unsweetened coconut milk. I use Native Forest organic coconut milk, the simple, because there's no guar gum in it. So, all right, so you want to shake it up because sometimes the cream can rise to the top and then all you're left with is coconut water. So you want to just shake it up real good before you pour it in. See, there you go. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to add 1/4 cup of melted coconut oil. So what I usually do is I take a scoop, I put it in my Pyrex measuring glass cup, and I stick it in the microwave for like 30 seconds. Or you can put it in a saucepan on top of the stove on a low heat, let it melt. You only need 1/4 cup of melted coconut oil. When you're following the healing diet protocol, we do not do unnatural or processed sugars. So when it comes to sweetening your pastries or your desserts, you want to use things like honey, agave, or maple syrup. When I'm baking, I like to use the maple syrup. So you use 8 tablespoons of maple syrup. So next you're going to add your lemon juice. You can either use 1 fresh lemon or 2 tablespoons from lemon juice from a jar. Make sure it's 100% natural, no additives, no preservatives, no added sugars. Next, you're gonna add about 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And if you've watched me cook before, I don't measure. I just kind of pour it in. And the same with the cinnamon. You're just gonna sprinkle. If I had to guess, it's probably about 1 teaspoon. I just do a light coating on the top of my mixture. The next thing you're gonna add is your baking powder. And you want to make sure that it is aluminum free. On the healing diet protocol, we are trying to rid our bodies of heavy metals. So when we're cooking, we want to make sure that we're not using ingredients that have metals in them. And that includes your baking powder. So when you're buying your baking powder, make sure you find baking powder that is aluminum free. Add 2 heaped teaspoons of baking powder. 1, 2. And then the next thing you're gonna add is a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. So I'm gonna show you that it's already starting to bubble, and that's the reaction from the lemon and the baking powder and baking soda. And what that does is it takes the place of the egg. I like to mix my wet ingredients before adding my flours. As you can see, the lemon and the baking powder and the baking soda are already starting to do their thing. The mixture is starting to bubble and foam and get thick, and that's gonna take the place of your egg. The next step is adding our flour. I use a mixture of coconut flour and a 1-to-1 gluten-free baking flour. Once you add the flour, you want to go ahead and mix your ingredients. I'm going to show you again the reaction that the lemon juice and the baking powder and baking soda are having, and the flour and the way it looks. So that way you know that you're doing this right. You see how it's foaming? That means that it's going to help your batter rise when it's baking. All right, so next you just want to mix up your ingredients. And you want to mix it really well, so you want to make sure you scrape the sides of your bowl. So you want to make sure all your dry ingredients and your wet ingredients are mixed very thoroughly. Seems a little thick. You can always add a little bit more coconut milk or just some water is fine. I think this time I'm going to add a little bit of water because it appears that my batter's pretty thick. But you don't want it too runny because it is a cake. So you want to mix your flours pretty thoroughly because you're working with a different type of flour than what you're used to. So you're working with coconut flour, which is more grainy, and it won't taste grainy in your recipes if you mix it up really well. And of course, a gluten-free flour, like your one-to-one baking flour, is going to make your pastries a little more dense. So you have to really kind of play with this a little bit. I know when I first started meal prepping, it was a lot of trial and error when it came to baking. The next ingredient that you want to add at this point, and you just want to fold them in, is your wild organic blueberries. These are from my mother-in-law's garden, so I know that there are no pesticides or anything on them. I did wash them really well, and I looked through to make sure I got all the little stems off. So these are going to be amazing in this recipe. So you want to add about a cup of blueberries. You want to fold them in gently. You don't want to stir because you don't want to mash them. I'm a big fan of blueberry, and I love the healing properties of blueberry. Blueberries help remove heavy toxins from the body. So I pretty much load up my muffins and my bundt cake with blueberries. So the next thing you want to do is you want to spray your bundt pan, and you want to spray it generously because you don't want this to stick. You want it to be able to flip out real easily when you're done. So I use an olive oil cooking spray. You can use coconut oil, avocado oil. You just want to make sure there's no soy in your cooking spray. So you want to make sure you spray the pan all around, including the middle, because you don't want it to stick. If your cooking spray looks a little bubbly or maybe it's too much, you can always take a paper towel and just smooth it out. Your next step is putting the batter into your bundt cake pan. What you're gonna do is you're gonna scoop in about half, so on one side, and then you're gonna scoop the other half on the other side. You wanna try and get it as even as possible so that your cake bakes evenly. So you want to go ahead and smooth it out. Make sure it's evenly distributed in the pan. Now you're going to put it in the oven at 350, and you're going to bake it for probably about 30 minutes. You're going to check it to see if a toothpick comes out clean, and if it does, then it's ready. If not, you'll bake it again for 5-minute increments until it's done. All right, I'll be back in a few minutes. So it's been about 25 or 28 minutes or so since we put the bundt cake in the oven, and it looks like it's probably done. It's a nice golden brown on what's going to be the bottom because we're going to flip it. Now all I'm going to do is check to see if it's done. And it appears to be done. The toothpick is coming out clean. So what we're going to do is we're just going to let it sit for about 5 to 10 minutes and let it cool because you can't flip it out of the pan if it's still too warm. So just give it some time to cool off a little bit, and I'll show you how to flip it out. Okay, so the last step is to flip the bundt cake out of the pan. So the easiest way to do this, I find, is to use a rubber spatula and start working it around the bundt cake, like in between the cake and the sides of the pan. And you're just kind of like moving the cake away from the sides of the pan. You're not cutting it or anything. You're just trying to create, like release the suction, release the cake from the pan itself, so that way when you flip it, it just slides out, hopefully. What I like to do is I like to take a cake rack because the cake is still hot and I want it to cool a little bit more. So I place the rack on top of the bundt pan and I hold them together firmly and I flip. There we go, I think we did it. All right, let me get the legs set so I don't lose my cake. There we go. All right, you ready? Let's see the masterpiece. Ta-da! There we go. And that is the Bundt cake.